Again, Year 5, on to Chapter 5, Assembly, Keep Out. Harvey looked up from his page of calculations and stared out of the window, fidgeting. All around him the others were working hard. Ian was writing steadily in his elegant sloping script. Mandy was frowning over a difficult problem, and Ingrid was running her hands through her untidy hair and chewing the end of her pencil. Even Lloyd was not paying him any attention, but Harvey could not concentrate, because Dinah had made him think about assembly again. What did go on in the hall when they were all in there? "Harvey," said Rose sharply, looking up from the book she was reading, "why aren't you working?" "I'm just thinking for a moment." That was true anyway. He waited until Rose was bent over her book again and then prodded Lloyd. "What do you think they're doing?" he mouthed noiselessly, pointing towards the hall. Lloyd frowned back at him and mouthed back, "Films, of course. Get back to your work." Harvey looked across at the hall and frowned. The blackout curtains were certainly drawn as if for a film, but all round the edges of the curtains he could see thin streaks of light. And it was always like that. Every day he often looked across when he was supposed to be working, and he'd never seen the lights go out, not once, so they couldn't really be watching films. What were they doing? He wriggled in his chair with frustrated curiosity. "Harvey Hunter, will you sit still and get on?" Rose was really irritated now. Harvey could see that he would have to be careful or something nasty would happen. He was just about to go back to his calculations when he suddenly had an idea. "But I can't concentrate, Rose," he said, making his voice into a whine. "I want to go to the toilet." Rose looked even more annoyed. "You should learn not to be so disorganised." "Please, Rose." He knew he sounded stupid, but he couldn't bear it any longer. He had to go and have a look in the hall. "Please, I can't wait till the end of school." She looked rattled for a moment, as the prefects always did when you asked them something unexpected. Then she nodded reluctantly. "Oh, all right, but be as quick as you can." As he jumped up, he saw the others looking at him. Mandy's gentle face was worried. She had guessed he was up to something. He slipped quickly out of the door before she could mouth a question at him, and ran along the corridor on tiptoe until he reached the hall doors. The double doors had glass panels at the top with heavy curtains drawn across. By stretching up and peering, he could see through a narrow gap at one side, and he stood there, looking. There was no screen on the stage, no projector, no sign at all of anyone getting ready to show a film. Instead, everyone in the hall, teachers and children, were staring fixedly at the stage. On the stage stood the headmaster, stooped forward like a giant vulture. Harvey saw with amazement that he'd taken off his dark glasses. "But I've never even seen him like that," Harvey thought, "except on the first day I came here." He leaned further forwards, pressing his nose against the glass in an effort to try and find out what was going on. The headmaster seemed to be reading aloud from a book that he held in his hands. As Harvey watched, he stopped, then glanced up and spoke a few words. Immediately, all the people in the hall started to chant in a regular monotone, as if they were repeating back from memory what he'd read. It must have been pages long, because the voices went on and on and on. But struggle as he might, Harvey could not make out more than a few words. He caught "system" several times, and once a number, one astronomical unit, but none of it made any sense, and still the voices went tirelessly on. It was tempting to stay to try and find out more, but just in time Harvey remembered that he would spoil his excuse if he didn't get back quickly. Gnawing his bottom lip, he hurried away along the corridor. He did not look back. If he had, he would have seen Jeff slide out from behind a tall bookcase beyond the hall doors and stare after him with a gloating smile on his face. But it never occurred to him to glance over his shoulder. He was too busy getting back to the classroom. As he let himself in, Rose scowled at him. "You were too long." "Sorry." He slid into his chair. Better write hard for a bit until she'd stopped watching him. He scratched away industriously, keeping an eye on her under his eyelids. When he was certain that she was deep in her book, he scrawled a message onto a spare piece of paper. They weren't watching films, so sucks. They were listening to the headmaster. With great care, he flicked it across onto Lloyd's desk. Lloyd gave him a disapproving frown, but when he had read the note, he raised his eyebrows, and a few moments later another note landed on Harvey's desk. "We'll ask Dinah when we get home." As they sat over their tea, Dinah was even quieter than usual. She gazed into her cup, watching the brown liquid swirl round, and Mrs. Hunter had to ask her 3 times whether she wanted another piece of cake. "Sorry," she looked up at last. "Thinking about school," Mrs. Hunter smiled. "I was going to ask you if you had a nice day. What did you think of it?" "I think," Dinah said steadily, that the headmaster is a marvellous man and this is the best school I have ever been to. Harvey sniffed scornfully and looked at Lloyd. But Lloyd was watching Dinah. Her face had gone white, almost as if she were frightened by what she'd said. The next instant she had lowered her eyes and begun to munch her piece of cake. "Let's all go in the playroom," Lloyd said suddenly. "Come on, H. You come in, Dinah." Dinah swallowed her mouthful of cake. "If you like," she said carefully. She followed them through and sat down as Lloyd closed the door. "Now," he said, "suppose you tell us what you were doing in the hall all afternoon." Dinah said mechanically, "We saw a film." Lloyd looked knowingly at Harvey. "Oh, yes, what was it about?" Dinah took a deep breath and began to talk as if she were reciting. "It was a film about ants. It was very interesting. We saw how they build their nests and look after their eggs and how their queen lives." She stopped abruptly. "What else was it about?" Lloyd said. "I don't remember." "Did the headmaster talk to you about it afterwards?" "I don't remember." "Rubber ravioli!" Lloyd burst out. "Don't you remember anything? You're a proper dunce, aren't you?" Harvey giggled suddenly. "She'll never be on Eddie Hare's great school quiz." "Oh, shut up about stupid Eddie Hare," snapped Dinah. "What's all this about, anyway?" "Oh, nothing," Lloyd said airily. "We just wanted to know what happened, that's all. But if you're too thick to remember anything—" "I always remember things," Dinah said slowly. "Always. I don't understand." For a moment she looked as if she was going to go on. Then her face snapped shut and she shook her head. "I've told you what I can. I can't tell you any more." "But I can tell you something," Harvey said. "Be quiet, you idiot." Lloyd gave him a shove. "No." Harvey looked obstinate. "It's not fair to ask her questions and then not tell her. Besides, I want to hear what she's got to say." He turned back to Dinah. "I sneaked out of our room and had a look through the hall door. I didn't see any sign of a film." Dinah stared at him and he nodded. "That's right. Nothing. No screen or projector or anything. And I was watching from across the playground all the rest of the time. The lights in the hall didn't go out once, so you can't have seen a film. You're lying." "What did you see?" Dinah said hesitantly. "I saw you all sitting, looking at the headmaster on the stage. He read something long out of a book, and you all repeated it back. I don't know what it was, but you must know. You said it all from memory." Dinah frowned harder and shook her head. "I don't remember anything like that happening." "Huh!" Lloyd sat down and stretched his legs out. "What did happen then?" "I told you. We saw a film. It was a film about ants." She was talking in that steady reciting voice again. "It was very interesting. We saw how they build their nests and look after their eggs and how their queen lives." "That's what you said before," Harvey bounced up. "It's exactly what you said before." "And it's not true." Lloyd banged his hand down on the table. "So why do you keep saying it?" I don't know." For a minute Dinah looked bewildered, then her face pinched. "I don't want to talk about it. Why do you keep going on about it?" "Because it's ridiculous," Lloyd snapped. "You heard what Harvey saw." Dinah was beginning to look annoyed. A faint pink flush ran along her cheekbones and the tip of her nose turned white. "You hadn't got any business to be seeing anything," she said crossly. "What do you think you were doing, snooping around like that?" "I thought there was something peculiar going on," Harvey said mildly. "And I was right, wasn't I?" "You don't know anything about it," Dinah muttered, "and if you go on nosing you'll get into trouble." "I told you not to tell her, H," Lloyd burst out. "Bright green baked beans. Suppose she goes off and tells the headmaster what you said." Harvey turned pale. "Oh, but she wouldn't do that, would you, Di?" "Of course not," Dinah started to say. Then she stopped and looked craftily at Lloyd. "At least I might be tempted if you don't leave me alone." "Don't you dare!" Lloyd jumped to his feet. "Harvey hasn't done anything wrong." "Oh, no?" Dinah said triumphantly. "Then why is he looking so scared?" She was right. Harvey's round face had crumpled with fright and he was twitching nervously at the edge of his jumper. "He was silly, that's all," Lloyd said. "I've told him 100 times not to get involved with things, but he didn't do anything wrong." "Can't he speak for himself?" Dinah said scornfully. "Look at him, he's shaking like a jelly. He's nothing but a baby. Running around school and peering in at windows. It's so childish." "That's all you know." Lloyd had gone red in the face. "It was a silly thing to do, but it was very brave. Only I don't suppose you would understand." "Why not?" Suddenly Dinah went very quiet. She stopped looking at Lloyd and turned to Harvey. "Why don't you explain to me? I know he doesn't like me," she waved a hand towards Lloyd, "but you've been quite nice, really, and I want to understand. Why was it so brave of you to look in at the hall?" "Don't tell her a thing," Lloyd said sharply. "Go on," Dinah said in a soft voice. "Tell me, Harvey, what's going on in that school? Why is everyone so well behaved? And what do you think happens in assembly?" I don't know," Harvey stuttered, but Suddenly Lloyd darted at Dinah, pushing her through the door and into the hall with one gigantic shove. Slamming the door shut, he leaned against it and glared at Harvey. "Haven't you got any sense at all, H? Can you get it into your thick head that she's one of them? If you tell her anything at all, she'll probably go off and repeat it all to the headmaster, and then you'll get me and all the others in trouble as well." Harvey went even paler. "I don't think she would. Not really. Would she?" "I don't know," Lloyd said grimly. "We'll just have to wait and see, won't we?" Harvey chewed nervously at the end of a finger. From outside in the hall came the sound of voices. Mr. Hunter had come in, and he was saying to Dinah, "How did you get on at school then? What do you think of it?" Dinah's mechanical voice came clearly through the door. "I think the headmaster is a marvellous man, and this is the best school I've ever been to." Wowzer. One way to get children to do what you want them to. I don't think we'll be taking it up at BPS. Okay, guys, see you later. Bye.